Hi, good morning all. So today we have Prasanth. So he's a senior product designer from Kissflow, and he is going to share his thoughts about a few things. And first he will present, then later we can have the question and answer sessions.
So, hi guys, I'm Prasanth. So, I studied here way back, like 4 5 years back in Aspira. Currently, I'm working as a senior product designer at Kissflow. Like anybody, like all of you guys, my chosen job is not UX though. I eventually fell into UX job as a product designer. I initially started my career as a graphic designer and VFX animation artist, and then shifted my job to product designer. I was previously working at Mahindra for like 2 or 3 years, and then I joined Kissflow, and it's been 3 years at Kissflow. Typically, I have around 5 years of experience. So that is it about me. A little intro, maybe. Okay, we'll get going with this session. Typically, I'll be sharing about the entire process about the from how a feature is put into table by the product owners or managers, and uh, how we will check the design, basically the end-to-end process of the entire feature. These are points we will be covering about, which I'll elaborately explain later on maybe. Before we start, it's actually good to understand like what are all the markets that's there before you get to choose your job as a product designer. uh, Typically there are like a lot of markets, but it's good to understand like the major market like B2B and B2C. B2B is something where business sells its service or solution to a particular business itself. Let's say uh, Kissflow or Zoho or Freshworks, they have a software as a service, and then they sell it to another business. Let's say business A, B, C, D, or anything. So here the business directly sells their product to another business, which is called B2B. And B2C is something where the business directly sells its solution or service to the end user or the consumer itself. uh, Examples like for B2C, we have Flipkart, Swiggy, or Amazon or Myntra, and then there is for B2B like Zoho, Kissflow, ChargeBee, or Freshworks. It's actually good to know your the market. When you upscale yourself in this career, it's the designers are validated based on their domain and market experience. So when you choose your job, make sure to check whether it's a B2B or B2C, and what are all the challenges that's there in B2B and B2C. How can you upscale your self to leadership in B2B and B2C. These are good to know stuff actually before we jump in. So this process is something it's pretty subjective. It can vary from organization to organization, but the core process still it's going to be the same irrespective of any organization. Let's say this is basically how who are all the informed circle for a particular feature or entire product maybe at times. uh, Birth of a feature sometimes it comes from user reviews. It could be even a sales requirement. The sales team comes in and says like we need this feature so that we can 10x our revenue. Sometimes it could be from the user reviews or community reviews, where the user persistently keep complaining about a certain feature or requirement. That's how typically the product managers or product owners, they pick up a feature for that particular quarter. And if the criticality of the feature is like way higher, then we have CTOs and head of product management coming in, and they do have to get a buy-in from the CTOs and head of product management as well at times. And this level of stakeholders also vary from organization to organization again. And let's say like I said again, if the feature is like is going to be much more impactful or totally important for the product, and it's going to be very critical, then they might even have to inform CEO before picking that particular feature. And then if all the higher level stakeholders agree to pick this feature, then the product manager or the product owner comes into the business unit and inform the business unit. Business unit typically contains all the teams, like front-end engineers, back-end engineers, product designers, QA, UX copywriters, even the DevOps team, in fact. So after approval of all the higher level stakeholders, what happens is the product manager comes in with a feature kickoff, which is the very first stage of this feature, very first phase, in fact, where the product managers actually come up with a one pager or product specification itself. The difference between the one pager and product spec is that one pager is typically something that contains 2 or 3 lines that explains about why we are doing this feature. Product spec is something that contains everything, right from design behavior to engineering impact to everything else. So when the product manager comes in with this one pager, we sort of ask questions to the product manager. That's when you have to make sure that this particular spec, or this particular feature, whether it is essential for the users, what all the impact that's going to be there in the product because of this one particular feature. And then we have to go back again and validate this with the community feedback and support tickets as well. Let's say you work for Swiggy, and let's say a product manager from Swiggy comes in and says, we are going to have save menu items from each restaurant. Then you have to analyze why it is important. You have to ask questions to a product manager as to why we are doing this feature. Are the users typically asking this? How much of an impact that's going to be there for the product if we give this feature, and everything else. You may have to even analyze data, if you have supportive products, to analyze data as well. And what we do after that is let's assume that you have asked all the questions and now you get the clarity to what you're going to do with this feature. And that's when I typically collaborate with the product managers. What I'll do is I'll do a rough whiteboarding as to how the feature will work, how the flow from end to end is going to work. And typically I'll try to align with the essential requirement of the product manager during the whiteboard session. So the topic goes, like I said before, we'll be not only sharing about the entire process. There are going to be certain challenges in each process, which we will see in this slide as well. So here typically, like I said, the product managers and the product designer, they collaborate and whiteboard. And there are quite a few challenges when you collaborate with the product managers. Let's say product managers are they are always aligned with the business objectives and timelines. And whereas designers, we absolutely carry empathy. We think about how this user experience is going to be and everything. And that's where there is this middle phase where we differ actually. I've added an example. Let's say there is a save for later option in the shopping cart. We designers, we sort of tell the product manager that how this will enhance the user experience, or how it could bring more flexibility, or how much it could even lead to complete purchase in the long run. Whereas product managers, sometimes they think of the benefits, the immediate sales for that particular quarter because of this feature, or might even delay other important updates during the sales target as well. So a product manager and designer have to coexist really well during this phase. Let's say a product designer should have 30% of product manager skills, and product manager should think like a product designer 30% of the time. That's when the product manager and product designer can coexist during the whiteboarding stage. So this is a very critical phase because this is where You exchange ideas, you have conversations over what you are going to do, what you're not going to do with the product manager. And we have to be very careful when we are whiteboarding with the product managers, because we have to end of the day carry the empathy for the user as well. Then what happens is, like, we go into initial research and ideation after doing a rough whiteboarding with product managers just to align with what we are going to do. Then we move on to work on ourselves, like we'll start carrying out the research part, ideation, conceptualization, and even prototyping. I typically have a sometimes one-on-one conversation with the potential users. The potential users could be even the customer support people, sometimes the direct users or customers as well. And then I'll go on to do competitive analysis, and then a rough user flow of the feature, and then I'll go on to wireframing and then prototyping. We will also see the challenges during this phase. Let's say there are, like, a typical challenge when you go for a one-on-one with the customer or the potential user. Actually, it's really important to have a really good body language or tone when you interact with the consumers or the end user. uh, I've added an example here. Let's say if you are going to enhance bring in a new feature which is a dark mode to your product. Okay, uh, at that time, if you go and ask the participant, like, how do you feel about the idea of adding a dark mode to our app, and do you think it would be useful, the particular participant will definitely say yes, dark mode would be really great. It sounds like it's a useful feature, obviously. But uh, we are unknowingly being very biased. We penetrate them or narrow down their thoughts to answer this question, actually. So there is this other example which I have added. You could ask question without being biased. Like, let's say we should let's say, like, not narrowing down the users thoughts, if you ask me. So there is, like, this question, right? Can you tell me about your experience using apps with dark mode? Let's say you have to throw questions that where users don't feel very biased, or that doesn't narrow down their thoughts, actually. So that's when you will be able to get replies that are very good for moving on to next process. Let's say if you ask the user, like, how do you what is your experience with the dark mode, how do you typically use it, if at all, then they will answer like, I actually don't use dark mode. Dark mode is very compulsive to my eyes, and I don't feel like using during the daytime. You get lots and lots of answers when you don't narrow down the thoughts, actually. This is very challenging, especially when you get into a customer call, actually. And that's when you have to be very careful not to ask biased questions. So the challenge with the competitive analysis is, like, when you are working for a B2B, you typically don't have data to other products. Even the login and sign up are going to be very difficult, since you don't have a business email. And the competitive product, they keep on changing from week to week, and it's going to be very difficult when you do competitive analysis at times. But if you have a right framework to do that, then it's good to continue competitive analysis. But with B2C, I mean, since it's straightly the end user who is going to consume that particular app in B2C, then you do have access to all the apps. And again, there are going to be changes from week to week or month to month again in B2C as well. So if you have a right framework for competitive analysis, and it's good to carry your competitive analysis and extract what are the solution you could provide after thorough research. And so when you move on to wireframes, let's say now you are whiteboarded with the product manager, and then you moved on to research part. You had a one-on-one conversation with the potential user or the customer itself, and then you go on to competitive analysis. Now you do have like 30% of clarity as to what you are going to do, maybe even more than 50% at times. Now that's when you have to, like, start wireframing in a very rough level, if you ask me. Let's not get into digital wireframes itself. Maybe even a notebook and sketch would help. And then when you think that you have completed the entire flow during the wireframe, uh, that's when there are certain challenges in wireframe as well. Let's say there are like multiple stakeholders, and you have to pitch in your wireframe to multiple higher level stakeholders. There could be different level of opinion on those wireframes as well. So it's good to not to bring in any UI elements into like colorful UI elements into wireframes, which could deviate the topic as well. So you can just go in with a very rough wireframe to convince your stakeholders. And if you don't have clarity during the wireframe stage, and it's going to mess up a lot of flows. Let's say you are like wireframing for a feature. Let's say you work for a e-commerce, you wireframe a flow for add to cart and then checkout. Then if you don't have clarity on what are all the content or what are all the things that you're going to show up in a product specification page, you essentially don't have anything to put forth in your wireframe itself. So it's really good to have total clarity before you begin wireframe, at least 50% of clarity to begin your rough sketch wireframe. And that's where you come in with a lot of debate and feedbacks as well, which will shape for a very high fidelity wireframes. So prototypes, it can be sometimes very time consuming. You cannot prototype the flow entirely from end to end. And it at times it actually even bottlenecks with the timeline of the feature. So it's good to make sure that you understand your timeline and then prototype the flow extensively or even roughly. So these are the challenges during the wireframing and prototype stage, where uh, you get to like mess up a lot if you don't have clarity. So let's say you have completed the wireframe, and you have complete clarity over it. Now you move on to sell it to the higher level stakeholders. Let's say this feature is really impactful, and it's going to like provide 10x revenue to the company. That's when the higher level stakeholders come in to see your wireframes, uh, throw their feedbacks on your wireframes. So it's good that you organize your file really well during the wireframes. It's good that you have a lot of variations, like two to three variations, and it's good to have confidence over one particular variations and throw them at the last, maybe, to win your stakeholders. So there are quite a few challenges when you present your wireframes to the stakeholders as well. Let's say there are like a number of stakeholders, and there are obviously going to be a lot of conflicting opinions and feedbacks over which one to do, which one not to do, which one to prioritize, which one not to prioritize. They may even have don't have a strong background on design, leading to very much of a misunderstanding and misinterpretation of the wireframes. So, and the biggest challenge is like you have to you cannot basically incorporate all the feedback from the stakeholders, which will be very challenging, in fact. Especially like I mentioned here, if you have impractical or conflicting opinion, it's going to be very difficult to sandwich all the feedback into wireframes. So you have to take a thin boundary as to which feedback you are going to accept and which feedback you are not going to accept. If you are not going to accept that feedback, or it's not going to work out, if you think, you have to be very critical about it and convey it in a very professional manner to the same stakeholder, saying why you have opted for this particular solution. And this is a very key element in terms of leadership for a product designer. You have to like really sell, you know how to sell your wireframes to higher level stakeholders. That's going to help a lot when you are scaling towards leadership in your product design role in your career, maybe. So this is where all the feedbacks and refinements and everything takes place. Let's say you have convinced stakeholders, and let's say there are quite a few feedbacks as well, and we move on to the next phase where we collaborate with the engineers and we check for the feasibility of that particular feature. Let's say you have you work for Microsoft or Google, which is a very legacy system. Like, it's a very complex system. It's been around for years, and you work on a feature like, let's say, something like, you are going to change the entire inbox or inbox of the Gmail or Outlook. You have to be very considerable about the engineering feasibility as well, because you are changing a system that's been around for like years and years. And at the same time, you don't have to narrow down your thoughts, considering the engineering feasibility. You have to be you have to have complete freedom over your first wireframe, and then you bring in engineers and then check for feasibility. And then you have to, like, the engineers, product managers and designers have to agree upon going for a very lean version that may not impact the entire framework. At the same time, you provide solution for the users as well. So uh, the takeaway is, like, you have to design with complete freedom, and then when engineers come in, there are going to be certain checkpoints, uh, and the engineers and designers have to mutually agree upon and move on with the a key decision or a very MVP decision to implement that particular feature. uh, so there are, like, other factors as well. You have to consider the cost as well. Let's say you work for again, you work for Microsoft or another like Google, and you are going to implement something like AI bot or AI chatbot or anything, or you are going to cater certain feature through AI. You can flourish your design. You can come with a, a very extensive great wireframes, but at the end of the day, if an engineer comes and says, like, a particular prompt will cost around some dollars in the backend, or let's say the cloud server will take up to this minute and it's going to cost us, it might at times even impact your wireframes, your designs, in fact. So you have to accordingly change your designs. You have to provide solutions according to budget as well at times. So these are, like, some of the core challenges, but there are a lot of other minimal challenges as well which might affect the design. So the bottom line is, when the engineering feasibility comes in, there could be changes to your wireframes and designs. So once the engineering feasibility is done, let's say uh, when you pick up your design, like when you start your high fidelity or final design, you have to have complete understanding about that entire feature from start to end. And you have to know what are all the constraints that are going to be there, and that's when you pick up your high fidelity design. Without clarity, if you are going to, like, start your high fidelity design, it's going to be more or less like a wireframe process. There'll be multiple iteration again. So it's good to have complete clarity when you begin your high fidelity design. And there are quite a few challenges during the design phase as well. We design and we try and craft those design on top of components, which is going to be eventually time consuming. And of course, a good designer need to know is or her time when they design that particular feature. And if you are working for a very complex software or a system, then uh, let's assume that there are going to be components in place. And if your solution if your design solution is going to bring in a new component to the design system, or even maybe a new variant to already working component, then you have to make sure that you inform the business unit, let's say the product managers or product owners, uh, boss, there is going to be a new component or new variant to a component. We are going to, like, work 3 or 4 days extensively for that as well, and it will extend our time in delivering this particular design. So this is particularly when you are working for a very complex system, which has like a lot of components in the design system. And there could be requirements during the design phase as well. And I mean, our job is completely iterative during each and every phase, and we have to be very flexible about that. And once you have designed, of course, you will have UI reviews. It could be any organization. There are going to be UI reviews in place, just to make sure that there are no component overrides, and there are, uh, just to make sure your design, speaks that particular product's design language. Here in Kissflow, we actually, schedule UI review with, design colleagues, and we even check for, spacing and typography and everything. Let's say even the color variables. So again, design phase is again going to be a very long process as well. Of course, it depends upon the feature size, anyways. Again, these are like core challenges, but there are going to be other challenges as well, which are going to impact your design again. So the bottom line again for design and iteration phase is that make sure you have complete understanding of the flow before you pick up that particular final design for that feature. So let's say, like, you have done everything, like right from whiteboarding to wireframing to prototype, and then you have now completed the entire design. Now comes next phase, where you have to push those designs into development stage. Maybe I'll just share some of my working file as to how handoff works here at Kissflow. I hope you guys don't tell this outside, because there is handoff in Kissflow here. So how I typically hand off is like, we use Figma to hand off design files. And if there are going to be any particular behavior in a particular screen, I use plugins, or even plugins like sticky notes to inform engineers or copywriters to why what is the particular behavior for the screen. And so that they will be able to recollect during the development stage. And typically a very large feature contains like various stakeholders comments. Let's say if I zoom out this one, there are going to be like a lot of bubbles. Like there will be numerous stakeholders who will be collaborating in this particular feature, like right from copywriter to QA to even the backend and front end engineers. So there are going to be a lot of people who will be involved during this design handoff stage. And I typically hand off like I use flows to organize my file. Let's say you work for Swiggy or Flipkart. Right from login to buying that particular product, there are going to be sub flows inside each feature. Let's say login and sign up is one particular flow, and then there's going to be product description page, which is going to have its own flow, and then there is going to be checkout stage where it has its own flows. So what I'm trying to say is like there is a feature, and it has got a lot of sub flows inside one particular feature. So it's better to organize your files flow based, so that the developer will be able to consume it very easily during the development stage. So here you can see, like let me just do this. Okay. I hand off in particular way where each flows are one section. Let's say if there's going to be a error in one particular flow, error alone will be one particular section. And let's say there are going to be alert models or pop-out to inform users as to there are certain dependency in the flow, then it is going to be one particular flow. And there are going to be other screens for that particular flow as well. So typically that is how I hand off, and that it's basically very engineering friendly, if you ask me. And it's good to hand off that way. There could be other ways, of course, but I prefer to hand off in each and every flow based manner. And I should have shown this before, I guess. Okay. Like I said, during the warframe stage, right, we have to bring up a lot of variations, and then we have to have confidence over one particular variation which will sell to higher level stakeholders. So what I'll do is like, uh, I'll have like, I'll sketch our wireframe variant 1, 2, and then 3. And if I say, let's say I have confidence over variant 3, when I get into like, the stakeholder meeting, I'll purposely show variant 1 and 2 at times, just to make sure that the variant 3 build up the builds up my confidence, and it aligns with what they expect. So basically the variant 1 and 2 at times which you are not that sure about, or you are very skeptical about those variations, it's good to present just to make sure that the variant 3 which you have in your wireframe will sell over variant 1 and 2, just to make sure their expectation is met with variant, you are confident you are about that particular variant. So this is how I organize my wireframes as well. I note down the key points, and like I said, I have multiple variations, and if I'm skeptical about some other variations, I'll just present them at first and then move on to the variation which I'm really confident about to sell that particular variation. Implementation and development. So yeah, uh, that's how I hand off my file. And during this phase is where the copywriters as well come in. They provide copies, UX copies to your feature, and you have to make sure that those UX copies are like carries the same empathy when we design as well. So the user, by seeing those copies, they be able to understand the particular feature or particular navigation as well. And again, when you bring in new components to a complex design system, you have to make sure that the particular components align with the uh, current design system as well. There could be technical constraints again during the stage of development, which might again impact design. Again, it's going to be iterative at times, and the technical constraint during the development stage, it could be very minimal, uh, and yep. But there could be technical constraint during the stage of development as well. And once the feature is developed by the front end engineers, you have to like sit with developers and make sure that uh, the development is completely matched along with the design that you have shipped. And you have to make sure that everything is pixel perfect, everything is aligned with the design system. Make sure that they use all the variables that you have mentioned. And you at the same time, parallelly, there are going to be questions or tickets from the quality analyst team as well, where they'll be regressively checking those feature. They'll be doing complete sanity over that particular feature, and they ask questions and feedbacks which you should be able to answer during the initial development stage as well. So there are again, these are like core challenges. There are going to be like small or bigger challenges as well during the design or implementation stage. And post launch, let's say you have designed and the development is ready, and it has been pushed to production, it went live. Now you have to make sure that you track that particular feature. You have to make sure that the experience that you think you are going to cater to that particular user works the particular way, and there are no deviations. And of course, there are going to be challenges when it might not be working as expected, the experience part, and you have to go back again and enhance that particular flow, and again design that, and you have to send it for enhancement to the development. Again they have to develop and then push again to production. So yeah, so why I'm saying is that is like, it's like once you have designed and the particular feature has gone live, it doesn't mean that there are going to be no changes to your that particular feature. You have to be ready to work on the enhancement part again once it goes live. uh, Sometimes the user may not even particularly engage the way you expect them to engage with that particular feature. So you have to like we use tools like postdoc to record sessions of the users, and make sure that it's working in the right way. If there are any deviations, again you have to bring your designs into the table. Once it has gone live, there could be bug and technical issues. Let's say the button is broken, the CTA is broken, and you have to again call the developer and make sure they fix that particular button. And it's there are going to be issues and bugs sometimes when you it live as well. And the competitor analysis which you have done for that particular feature, when after a while the same competitor may change that feature and relook it in a different way. And that's why I said competitive analysis, at times you have to have a right framework to carry out that. And you have to make sure that you stay along in the competition, and you have to enhance again accordingly to the competitor's product as well. So this could happen once you hit live again. And working on these enhancement part after a particular feature goes live, it will run very parallelly. Let's say you have shipped the particular feature, and then you are moving on to next feature, and there could be tickets again from the say the previous feature which you have to like parallelly run and complete it. So that's how it is going to be in some organization, of course, at least for two organizations which I have worked so far. And these are again core challenges. There could be other challenges as well. And with that, like I said, right from whiteboarding to design, these are all the challenges that you have. But if you make sure that you have consistent check over certain things, then you are going to like smoothly run each and every feature or each and every work that you're going to pick up as a product designer. The core value is to make sure that you have empathy while you design for the users, which is going to be really really important throughout your career. And I mean, the second point, problem solving, is something which is the reason why I fell in love with this particular job. I love problem solving, and you have to keep sharpening your problem solving skill day in and day out to make sure that you provide the best solution to the users, and you stay in the this job market actually. And a good designer should definitely know how to manage their time for each and every feature. If you are going to, there is nothing better like let's say you are going to deliver this feature in this particular date and you are able to do it on that particular date. There is nothing like it. That's where you earn a lot of goodwill from the stakeholders and your fellow colleagues as well. Time management is really really important as a product designer. And being very adaptive and flexible is something that's that's that is something that should obviously stay with the product designer's character. Let's say I design something, I go for a feedback or a review session with the design team. There are going to be very harsh feedbacks at times, maybe even very rough feedbacks. You have to be very flexible about it and make sure not to take it personally and handle it in a very professional way. You have to take that as a critic and work on your design if it makes sense, and then provide a better solution. So adaptability and flexibility is something that's going to be really important for a product designer. Communication is of course key. You have to like when I mean communication, you have to like communicate really well with all the folks, right from front end engineer to back end engineer. Sometimes you have to take decision very engineering driven as well. You have to communicate really well with them. You have to communicate really well with the product manager, of course, who is going to travel along with you throughout your job career. Wherever you go, there is going to be a product manager, of course. And you have to communicate really well with the QA team as well. They know the product better than anyone else, in fact the QA guys in any organization. So it's good to have really well communication with your fellow mates. And collaboration, of course, you have to collaborate really well along, like, with everyone to come up with a solution. You have to make sure, like, understanding the business and the product is something that's really important. You have to, like, understand why you are doing this feature for this particular product. What are all the business impact that's going to be there when you provide this particular solution for this feature. It's good to always understand the business and the product side as a product designer, which will definitely help when you're scaling towards leadership. uh, like I said in the previous point, you have to understand engineering driven decision. Like, it doesn't mean that you have to learn coding or anything. It's good to learn coding, of course, just to know the basics of HTML, CSS. But end of the day, you have to understand if a design or a wireframe is going to change because of certain engineering decision or engineering, engineering capability. Then you have to understand why we have to change because of certain engineering constraint, and what is the constraint, so that you will be very mindful when you design your next feature. And it will also help during the course of your career as a product designer. The last point is something that I'll always be stressing about. Of course, you have to consistently hit the top bar when you sell your designs to higher level stakeholder. You have to go with full of confidence on your wireframes. You have to have 100% clarity over what you have done, and only then you will be able to answer the questions that the stakeholders throw at you. And you have to make sure that you reply again in a very professional manner, and accept critique and feedback in a very professional way. So like I said, there are going to be challenges. The product design role is something that's going to be very, very iterative, obviously, but you have to make sure that you tick all these boxes to uh, happily design, maybe. And that's it about my session, actually. I guess Ram might have planned for like 2 hours or something, but I came up with a very 45 minutes of slide, I guess.
Thank you, Prashant. So thank you for your valuable insights about how the designer functionality and other stuff.